Bishop, Brancatelli,
Here.
Cleveland,
Here.
Conwell, Griffin, Hairston, Johnson,
Here.
Bashir Jones, Joe Jones,
Here.
Easy,
Present.
McCormick,
Present.
Mooney,
Here.
Kalinsik, Santana, Slife, Zone.
Present.
Mr. Chairman, you have a quorum.
Thank you. Should have this memorized by now, but I'm going to read this from a sheet. This committee of the whole is being held during the COVID-19 emergency declaration in accordance with Ohio's open meetings laws as amended by Sub-House Bill 197. This meeting is being held using the Zoom platform, is being live streamed on YouTube TV. It can also be seen on Cleveland City Council website and from our Facebook page. In accordance with Ohio's open meetings regulation as amended by Sub-House Bill 197, notice of this committee hearing was publicly posted. Okay. And for our guests and directors that are trying to plan your day, we are going to go in this order: Planning Commission, Economic Development, Capital Projects, Public Works, and Finance. We do have two ordinances that were requested to be heard under suspension, one of which is a safety piece for the debate. The second is a human resources piece. So I'll try to get those in I'll try to get at least the HR piece because I believe that should be quick. Famous last words. So with that, I'm going to begin with planning. I see we have a number of guests on the call for this piece. So beginning with Resolution 713-2020 by Council Members McCormick, Cleveland, Bashir, Jones, Brancatelli, and Kelly by departmental request, an emergency resolution approving the expansion of the downtown Cleveland Improvement District, accepting the petitions from owners of property in the proposed district as expanded, approving the amended articles of incorporation of the Downtown Cleveland Improvement Corporation, approving the comprehensive services plan for continued operations of the district, declaring it necessary to provide for additional security, cleaning, maintenance, and economic development and marketing of the district, and providing for the assessment of the cost and expense of such work upon the benefited property in the district and declaring an emergency. Okay, who is here for this piece? Who from the administration would like to begin speaking on this? I'm going to go to Councilman McCormick. I know that you've spent a good amount of time on this, and you can introduce some of our guests that are here.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and appreciate you hearing this today. This is the renewal of the Special Improvement District in the downtown neighborhood of the city of Cleveland. This is co-sponsored, in addition to yourself, Mr. Chairman, by Councilwoman Cleveland and Bashir Jones, as other colleagues that represent parts of downtown. This is the renewal. I will just say in advance that there was a long process that this has gone through, and I want to thank. I thanked a lot of people on the last call, but for purposes of today, I just want to thank everyone who's supported this piece of legislation, as well as the Special Improvement District and the credible impact it's had on our downtown neighborhood over the years. So fully supportive of this measure. Mr. Chairman, I think it would be appropriate from the community side for Joe Marinucci to say a few words with your permission, Mr. Chair, on this piece.
Yes, please. Joe, welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, members of the committee. I also have Audrey Gerlach, who's a member of our team on the call. She's going to actually, if she can, import a map that will provide us a little bit more perspective on the reauthorization. As Councilman McCormick indicated, this is actually our fourth time working with property owners and coming before City Council. You'll remember we initially created the district back in 2005, and it's been renewed in 5-year increments since that point. As many of you know, one of the key elements of the program is our Clean and Safe Ambassadors, and that is the hallmark of kind of one of the keys of the services that we provide in terms of our work downtown. But I'd also note that we provide business development marketing, advocacy, and other types of services on behalf of the stakeholders and our partners in terms of our work downtown. I would note that we work very, very closely with a number of city departments, from the mayor's office to the Department of Public Service, to the Parks Department, to the Cleveland Police. So it's really a collaborative effort along with a number of other strategic partners. I would note that in terms of the renewal, a lot of the basics remain the same. For example, the formula used for the assessments is the same as we used in our other approaches. The two probably things that I'd like to highlight for council is the fact that, one, we've expanded the level of the assessments. In other words, we've increased the assessments to provide a annual commitment to Public Square and the Group Plan Commission. We'll be providing $400,000 a year for the programming, maintenance, and operations of the square. And as you know, the square is a very, very important asset, and very important to not only the region, but Cleveland, as well as to downtown. And in addition to that $400,000 annually, we will also contribute $100,000 from DCA revenues, which will again provide $500,000 of support, along with the city of Cleveland support for Public Square. In addition, we expanded the geography of the core special improvement district. If you look at the map, you'll see that we've expanded the boundaries to include Old River Road, as well as the Columbus Street Peninsula. We recognize that those areas very recently created national historic districts, which will allow them to take advantage of federal as well as state historic tax credits. So we look to those areas as areas where we can attract additional investment. And I see Director Collier has joined us, but he knows that obviously collaborating with things like Vision in the Valley are going to be very, very important. So we wanted to include this geography, and it also point out that the geography will include Canal Basin Park, the terminus of the towpath trail from the south, and that park then would connect obviously to the lakefront with a number of other trail initiatives that would go forward from there, and allow us to again be in a position to provide support to that park as it gets capitalized and hopefully comes online for the 5-year period. So that's a quick overview, and I'd be happy to answer any questions. And again, I know Director Collier has joined us as well, who has been—
Thank you, Joe. Much appreciated. At this point, I would like to recognize the additional sponsors. I've asked Councilwoman Phyllis Cleveland if she has questions.
I did. Now, what else to do? Record?
Okay, can we take this
No,
off the
do it.
screen? Everybody mute
Say
themselves if they're
record.
not speaking.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Councilwoman Cleveland.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I will echo Councilman McCormick's remarks, and again, give my kudos to Joe Marinucci and the Downtown Cleveland Alliance. You know, this is my third re-up with the downtown CID, and you know, the process, they have it worked down to a science and a T, and created a great model that's used in other parts of the cities. And I support this, and I ask my colleagues to support this.
Great. Thank you very much, Councilwoman. Is there, Mary, do you have a comment?
Yes, I just wanted to let you know that as of yesterday evening, Assessments and Licenses has been working overtime on this. And as of last evening, they confirmed that they do have owners of at least 60% of the front footage in approval of this. So they reached their goal yesterday.
Okay. Thank you. Is Councilman Bashir Jones on the call? Okay. At this point, I'm going to turn this over, open the floor up for questions. Councilman Mike Polensek. Councilman, you with us? Okay. Are there other questions and comments? I think Councilman Polensek is having technical difficulties. Mike, can you unmute yourself? There we go.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, my question was answered. I wanted to know what the percentage was of the businesses. So as of right now, it is 60%, and you can substantiate that?
If I could answer, yes, we're at 61 point, I think 4%. And I would also point out that we're continuing to work with licensing and assessments to verify a number of other signatures that we have, but are going through the process to make sure that the staff at licensing and assessments are comfortable with the signature. So that process continues, but we're pleased that we're able to confirm that we're over the minimum threshold for the legislation.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman. Are there any further questions, comments on resolution 71320? Hearing none, resolution 71320 stands approved. I want to thank everybody that did all the work that they did to make this possible. And Madam Clerk, I would like to abstain from this as I am the council's designee to the board. So I'd like to abstain on this and also this morning at the regular council meeting. So with that, resolution 71320 stands approved and will be heard by the full council tonight.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Joe. Thanks everybody for all the work you've done for this one. We're gonna move to economic development right now because I know we have guests from the schools that are here as well. So I'm going to ordinance number 50820, council members McCormick, Kelly, and Kelly by departmental request. An emergency ordinance authorizing the Director of Economic Development to enter into a tax increment finance agreement with Sustainable Communities Associates or its designee to provide for the developer to make certain improvements to the Lincoln building projects, to provide for payments to the Cleveland Metropolitan School District, and declare certain improvements to real property to be a public purpose. Is Director Ebersol with us? Is anybody from Economic Development with us? Leo, Mr. Serrano, is this the piece that you're here for, 50820?
No, sir, we're here for the athletics department.
Okay, so we're gonna push 50820 for later this morning. Gonna move to, is Director West on the call? I thought I saw her. No?
She's gone and I'm here, President.
Can I read 76820?
Yes, this is Gina.
Okay, so I'm going to read ordinance number 76820. Councilmember Kelly by department request, an emergency ordinance authorizing the Director of Human Resources to exercise a second option to renew contract number PS 2019-214 with Discovery Benefits, Inc. to administer the city's COBRA program and HIPAA compliance. Gina?
Good morning, Council President and members of the board. The Department of Human Resources is asking approval to exercise the second option with Discovery Benefits. That's our vendor for COBRA administration. COBRA, as you may already know, is a federal law that mandates employers to offer continued health insurance coverage due to end of employment, dependent losing eligibility, or death of employee or divorce. This vendor has been performing very well. They've been very efficient and reliable, and we would like to extend the contract to them.
Great. And Gina, how long have they been working with us?
They've been working with us since June of 2018.
Okay, and you're happy with their performance?
We are.
Okay, questions, comments on ordinance number 76820? Hearing none, ordinance number 76820 is being requested for passage under suspension, so ordinance number 76820 will be considered by the full council. Thank you, Gina.
Thank you.
Okay, I saw Director Howard is with us. So I'm going to move to the public safety ordinance. This is also requested under suspension. This is ordinance number 76620, Councilmember Zoning Kelly by departmental request, an emergency ordinance to authorize the mayor or appropriate director to enter into one or more agreements with the Cleveland Clinic Foundation and Case Western Reserve University related to the presidential debate which shall be designated as a major qualifying event subject to applicable provisions of codified ordinance chapter 697A. Director Howard.
Thank you, Council President. To council through the president, this is legislation that would allow the Director of Public Safety to enter into one or more agreements with public or private entities involved in implementing the presidential debate as necessary for the event. That the agreement would include a provisions for reimbursement to the city for additional costs incurred for services exceeding normal service levels during the event as determined by the Director of Public Safety or other appropriate directors as scheduled rates for special events approved by the Board of Control. Once this legislation is addressed through council, the Board of Control will meet to create the measures in which we would be operating up for the presidential debate. And to add is that there's discussions with the Cleveland Clinic about the cost of overtime, that they would be taking care of the cost of overtime. The day of the debate would, for the purposes of the city of Cleveland, would be a normal fiscal operating day with overtime and outside expenses being reimbursed by the Cleveland Clinic.
Thank you, Director. So the agreements that are being contemplated with the Cleveland Clinic Foundation and Case Western, is that with the Cleveland Clinic Police as well?
Yes, yes.
Okay.
This will be with Cleveland Clinic as an entity, including their law enforcement.
Okay. And who's in charge of this one then? Will Cleveland be running point on this one? Like, who's in charge of this event then?
So Cleveland Clinic is the organizer of the event. Security will be run by the city of Cleveland and our federal partners.
Okay. So
we
Cleveland,
as you know, we're partnering with Secret Service, ATF. So this is a conglomerate operation.
okay. So while the Cleveland Clinic is organizing it and their police will have a role, the real, the job of securing this event is going to be with Cleveland and our federal partners. Is that accurate?
Correct.
Okay. And then any agreement entered into with Case Western Reserve is basically going to have to do with the space that's there, or is there anything else that might be contemplated in an agreement with Case Western Reserve University?
Right, and we're using it'll be Case Western Reserve and the Cleveland Clinic are partnering with this, so they will be sharing responsibility with making sure that we have everything that we need to make sure that the surrounding area of the debate is secure.
Okay, so what would that agreement look like, or what's contemplated in that agreement?
If you give me one moment, that is the number of personnel that are required, our commitment as to who gets involved. And I don't want to get into the security planning of it, but who gets involved at what point, and who is going to incur the cost.
Okay. And then the agreement with the clinic is going to deal with both their police force as well as reimbursement for overtime.
Yes.
Okay. And my understanding then is that this will be business as usual in terms of, not business as usual, but financially and from a payroll perspective, right, this will be business as usual, and Cleveland Clinic will kick in the overtime that is incurred by our officers.
Yes, everything above our normal operations, Cleveland Clinic will be covering.
Great, thank you. And just kind of broader themes on this one is, I know when this was first announced, there was something, it wasn't like perfectly executed in terms of people didn't go to the mayor, people go to council when this was scheduled, and people didn't really seek, public safety's input on the very front end. That being said, and what's done is done, do you feel that working with our federal partners, do you feel confident in our ability to run a smooth, safe, successful event?
I do. It's been all hands on deck from day one of us finding out about this. We did not have the amount of time that Notre Dame would have had to prepare before they canceled. But we have been all hands on deck. We have, like I said, again, our state, local partners, our federal partners, National Guard. We are constantly engaged in conversation and with training to get us ready for this. We are ready and will be.
Great. And just to show you how little I know about this event, are there going to be guests there, or is it going to be virtual? Do we know that? Is there going to be, people spaced apart?
It's going to be virtual. It's approved for what I believe now is 300 guests, which is mostly press. And then the security contingent of the candidates, the president and Vice President Biden. So it won't be open to the public, or it won't be as large of a presence as traditional.
Okay, and but the big picture is you feel that we are in a good position to provide the adequate amount of security to provide a safe, smooth, successful event.
Yes.
Great. Thank you very much. That concludes my questions. I would like to go to Councilman Tony Brancatelli at this point. Oh, I'm sorry. Before I do that, I would like to go to the Chair of Public Safety, Councilman Matt Zone.
Sure.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, I would like to ask Deputy Chief Drummond, who will be in charge of field operations for the day, just to kind of give an overview. I'll kind of tee it up with some questions that I know colleagues have questions and concerns about. Deputy Chief Drummond, if you could talk a little bit about mobilization, setting up, leading up to September 29th. We yesterday received a press release out of the mayor's office talking about all the street closures that were going on in the perimeter of the area. So if you could just give an overview of mobilization leading up to the event, tear down after the event, when will it be restored to normal? And then I have a couple other questions related to that.
Good morning, Councilman, council members, to the chair, council. We, as you know, have been planning for this for a couple of weeks now. As the director stated, can you guys hear me okay? Want to make sure you can hear me okay?
Yep.
Okay, yeah, we, as the director stated, have been planning for this for a couple of weeks. Didn't have the opportunity to have several months of planning, but with that said, I believe we're prepared for it. As you know, with events of this magnitude and this scale, there are street closures, as you mentioned. So leading up to the event, we start the process of us closing streets so we can have the individuals or the debate folks start setting up itself for the debate, which means the loading process of it. So Commander or Commissioner Muick and his people have been working with the clinic and also the clinic police department to establish street closures that won't too adversely affect the community over there. So we'll still have traffic control and have the ability to get the citizens and folks that live and work around there to get around hopefully relatively smoothly. So the process is underway now, being coordinated again through Commissioner Muick and the Traffic Bureau. We are hopeful after the debate itself, which, as you know, is scheduled for the 29th, which is next Tuesday, we'll start the process of loadout. And again, that may take a little while. We're hopeful that we can have things back to normal by the end of the week, which would be October 1st or before with the loadout period. So again, we have a pretty robust place and plan in place to load in and load folks out. We'll have traffic control in the area, our traffic controllers, as well as Cleveland Clinic police officers and their traffic controllers in and around the area as well to provide, again, safe passage for folks.
Thank you, Deputy Chief. And through the chair to just a comment to my colleagues, since this kind of was thrusted upon us, we did not have sufficient time to have a briefing with the members of council like we did when the RNC came into town. And so thus we're having this conversation today. Through the chair to Deputy Chief Drummond, can you give some assurance to my colleagues on the phone that all the resources of CPD are not going to be utilized within the perimeter? People are worrying about what's happening in the neighborhoods. And so what will our staffing levels be in the 5 police districts outside of this perimeter?
To the chair, our plans are primarily make sure that the entire city, including the debate area, the 5 neighborhood police districts are well secured and fully staffed. As you're aware, we're moving to 12-hour shifts to make sure we have sufficient amount of personnel to not only take care of the city and answer calls for service there, but also to make sure that we have enough people in the debate area, downtown Cleveland, uptown, and so forth, west side of Cleveland, in case something does happen, and we hope nothing will, that we're prepared to handle that. So to assure you and the other council members, we have sufficient amount of folks working. To that point, Chair, we have canceled days off for that particular day, with the exception of individuals that are on vacation, actually scheduled vacations and so forth. Other than that, all hands on deck that particular day. So we'll have sufficient officers to answer calls for service. As a matter of fact, we should have a full car plan.
And through just a couple more comments, Mr. Chairman, through the chair to Director Howard, you alluded to it, and I'm glad Chief Dumas is on the phone. Cost reimbursement. So what your testimony was, Director Howard, is ordinary operation. We're still going to be mobilized in that area like we normally do. Anything over and above normal operations, overtime, or extra personnel that is deployed to that area, we will be seeking full reimbursement from who's that? Is that the clinic? Is that the federal government? Who is the city of Cleveland going to be seeking reimbursement from? Can you unmute yourself, Director?
My apologies, Councilman. Councilman, through to the council, we will be seeking reimbursement from the clinic if the opportunity presents itself to seek any reimbursement from additional resources such as the federal government. We will address that, but as of right now, the reimbursement will be coming from the clinic.
Okay, well, thank you. As I stated at my first comment, I mean, this debate was kind of thrusted on the city of Cleveland. City of Cleveland did not ask for it. A major employer of our city went after it. It was awarded. And so now we have to deal with it and make the best of it. Just know that the eyes of the nation and the world are going to be on our city. So we're going to have to really do a great job in terms of putting our best foot forward in reflecting the city. I know our police department will be up to the challenge and they'll do a good job. It was reassuring, Deputy Chief, to hear from you that personnel will be equally deployed throughout the city. And I'd strongly encourage my colleagues, if anyone has any thoughts or concerns about your own neighborhoods, contact your district commander. That would be the appropriate protocol, and work through them, and they can give you any assurance you need. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Councilman. Before I open up, I do want to go to the local council person, Councilman Blaine Griffin.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. First and foremost, there's a lot of concerns, and a lot of people in the community have some concerns on if this is going to spill out into the Fairfax community as well as the University Circle community. And I know that nobody's going to really share the entire plan, but one of the things that I would hope is that we don't protect this bubble where the debate is going to happen and the surrounding neighborhood serves as an overflow, and then people continue to go through the neighborhood and create havoc and make it uncomfortable and damage neighborhoods. I'd like to think that they wouldn't do that to a residential neighborhood, but is there a plan in place, or would it be assets on the ground in order to make sure you deal with that potential problem?
If I may, Director, or if you can take that if you want.
So we are constantly evaluating and gathering intelligence. We have been very, very mindful that that we protect the community. So no, we will not be securing the area around the Cleveland Clinic while letting the rest of the community go by the wayside. We will be attentive to the entire city, and especially attentive to the community surrounding the protest area and downtown.
All right, I'm glad you said that because if you didn't, I would have to call Ms. Drummond to tell her to make sure that she works with us to get that done over there. So, but the other thing that I really wanted to make sure that I asked is, what should residents and businesses look for? Do you guys have a tip sheet, or do you have anything that we should be notifying residents? I've had experience dealing with this, but a lot of residents and businesses don't know how to make sure they look for what to look for, how they need to make sure that they, make sure they secure their garbage cans and other things so that projectiles and other things aren't readily available to anybody who would do harm. What kind of tip sheets, or is anybody working with you guys to really make sure that we have that? And if people see something suspicious, is there a number that they should be able to call?
To the councilman, this is Deputy Chief Drummond, the councilman, and to the council members. Very good question. What I would recommend and suggest to the citizens and neighbors in the Fairfax area is that if they see something that looks out of place, looks suspicious, to call the non-emergency number, unless it's an emergency, the 621-123 number 1234 number. That's what I would advise. And also, if they see individuals that they don't recognize in the area, and they'll probably see folks like that come into the debate, that if they're hiding things, rocks, bottles, things of that nature, which is what we find during these events, that these individuals don't necessarily keep the items on their person. They may hide it in different areas and then come back to it. If they see suspicious individuals hiding things, putting things under cars, putting things in backyards, or just hiding things that looks like it could be dangerous for the community or the police officers, again, I recommend that they call the 621-1234 number.
Okay, and that's good to know, because I know with the May 30th incident that took place, a lot of people were calling me because they were trying to report it to police on scene or whatever, and they just didn't have a good way to report. So I really hope that we put out a firm number, a dedicated line, and if that's the line, that's fine, but a dedicated line that citizens can call to give tips to, because the biggest eyes on the ground for us are going to be the citizens to really help us do that. Is because this is a federal presidential debate, I know that like with the RNC that there had to be protest areas and staging areas. Are there staging areas going to be directly adjacent to the debate so that they're in earshot and eyeshot, or are there other outposts that they're going to be going to have rallies and do other things as well? Do we know of that, if anything like that is taking place?
Councilman to the council, are you referring to staging areas for law enforcement or for protesters?
For protesters. So for example, I know with the RNC that they had to have protest zones, and they actually had to have areas that were adjacent to where the actual event was going to take place. I think the ACLU actually sued the city to say that they needed to have better access, that protesters needed to be within earshot or eyeshot of the actual candidates. Does that apply to this? And so would that mean that the staging areas for any of the protesters will be directly adjacent to the Sampson Pavilion, or should we expect for them to be at the corner of 105th and Cedar, or maybe Huff or other place like that?
Well, the thing with protest zones is that even if we provided protest zones, there is nothing that stops them, or we can't prohibit them constitutionally from protesting anywhere where they want to outside of the secured area. So because of that, there won't be dedicated protest zones. People will be able to exercise their First Amendment rights to free speech surrounding the area, but not within the protected perimeter. And we are mindful of that. So they will be able to protest again without being designated any particular zone.
All right, that's something I would like to know more about. And I won't try to take up the time on this call, because if the perimeter and the bubble is going to be protected and people are going to gather, then they're going to identify places in the neighborhood or in the community in order to gather. If they can't get in that bubble, they're going to go maybe to a church parking lot at East Mount Zion or other places. So I'm really interested in how that's going to look so that we could do that. I'll let it go after this, Council President. I know that we are having a community meeting this Saturday at 12 o'clock. And I know that you guys have a meeting to do planning on this, but it would be great if I could either have the safety director or the chief or deputy chief just to come and reassure the residents that there is a plan, that you guys have a plan. We're going to be at 83rd and Quincy outside. So it'll be socially distanced and it'll be outside at the park. And we are really doing our community planning side, because I'm encouraging people to sit on their porches, turn on lights and everything else. This is an opportunity to tell our story. So I don't want any disruptions with our community, because we get a chance to do that. So, Mr. Howard.
83rd and Quincy, what day and what time?
This Saturday, September the 26th. This Saturday, September 26th, 12 noon. And it'll be right at Quincy Park, East 83rd and Quincy. And we just want, people just want to understand, because Beacon Place has a lot of concerns. So a lot of their residents will be there because they're directly to the west of that location. So there's a lot of people that are residents, not just businesses, but a lot of residents have some concerns. And I just want to reassure them that there is a plan in place, that assets are on the ground to make sure that this won't overflow into their community. And then I am working closely with University Circle and Chris Ronayne, because there's a lot of activity there that we want to be aware of. And then also, I think it's important to talk to Tudor Arms, because they have right now Lutheran Metropolitan Ministries there. So a lot of their staff, as well as their clients, will need access right there at Cedar and Carnegie and Stokes Boulevard. So just wanted to tell you some of the planning ideas we're having. So you guys will probably hear a lot from me the next few days. And we're going to do our part of the community. We just need to make sure that Cleveland Clinic isn't the only thing that needs protected in this process. Just want to make that clear, okay?
Absolutely.
Thank you, Mr.
Councilman. Councilman Tony Brancatelli.
Thank you, Mr. President. And I openly acknowledge I'm not excited about the Trump circus coming to town. This is the most unpopular president in the history of government. I heard the phrase that this was thrust upon us used a few times. We could have had the same courage Notre Dame said, and we could have said, no, we won't issue a permit. But it's in front of us. I don't support this. To Director Howard, you mentioned that they're going to cover, that the clinic is going to cover the cost of overtime. Who is covering the cost of our road closures, all our service departments, and all those that are necessary that have been outlined already today?
So that's what that will be addressed as well. This is where the language of the agreement or agreement shall include a provision for reimbursement to the city for additional costs incurred for services exceeding our normal. So that is encompassed in that additional cost exceeding our normal services. And then also the Cleveland Clinic has gone out and purchased a lot of their own bike racks to surround their property. So that's not, and DC Drummond, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but the majority of that is not city. So the Cleveland Clinic has purchased some of their own equipment needed to protect their property, but that will also be included in our discussion of reimbursement, the amount in excess of our daily operation. So not just overtime.
That's correct, Director. You're right, to the Councilman. Bike rack, anti-scale fence, and Jersey barriers, all that was purchased by the clinic or the Secret Service.
So Director Cox and all the public service side, those will all be reimbursed, which is good to hear. That'll be part of that agreement. I mean, and I'm glad to hear that the clinic and others are purchasing additional. This is not the RNC. I mean, the RNC was a completely different, structure, the corrals and the security that was done with the RNC and the multiple safety forces that came in from all around for that compared to just the city and some of our federal partners. The concern, the protesters will be out, we know that. And not having a protester area and just having a protection around the bubble is concerning because it just leaves it wide open for the rest of areas to deal with. And so it was mentioned earlier that this is being done in partnership with our federal partners, Secret Service, ATF. So the federal partners will be the lead and then we will be support. If I can get a clarifying point on that.
We will, it froze. We will be taking the lead. The City of Cleveland Police Department will be taking the lead over the areas that we are going to cover. The area where the federal agents will be covering with regard to their protected zone, they'll be running those. So it's a collaboration. And again, both of us being in charge of this operation, we will be in charge of the operations with regard to the areas that we will be covering.
Okay, so and I apologize. I have Spectrum cable and it freezes every once in a while, so hopefully it doesn't happen. And so it was mentioned earlier that we will not be inside the venue, but that will be the federal side being that will be inside the venue, and that will not be in our charge. Safety Director Howard.
You broke up on my end. I'm sorry, I couldn't hear. Was the question?
Okay,
will we
so
have to inside?
You're freezing up, Tony. You're freezing up.
It was stated earlier that City of Cleveland will not be.
To the extent that I heard the question, I think it had to do with who is inside the building versus who is outside. Do you have any comments on that, Director or Chief?
Yes, Chair, I do. We, the Division of Police, as the Director stated, will have the lead outside the secured zone. Inside the secured zone is the Secret Service. That is, they're in charge of that, them and also Cleveland Clinic Police, as well as Case Western Reserve Police. They have inside the bubble, so to speak. They have taken care of everything else outside of the bubble. Cleveland Division of Police has the lead.
Right, thank you. So I'm gonna, we'll put Councilman Brancatelli back on the list when he rejoins us. I'm gonna go to Councilman Mike Polensek at this point. Councilman?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman, to my honorable colleagues and to the administration. There have been some wonderful and some good questions asked. My question is to the director. We're 6 days away from the event. Can you explain to the body why you didn't come to us prior to this?
So we had been engaged in discussions with what security was going to look like. We have been developing security since we found out about this. And if it could have been brought sooner, we would have. It was based off of the knowledge that we had at the time and the ongoing discussions with who was going to provide what and how with the Cleveland Clinic and Case Western Reserve. So we had to iron out what personnel they were going to provide, how involved our community or local law enforcement partners were going to be involved, how involved we were going to be. There has been, I don't want to say debate, but ample discussion with regard to resources and who was going to be taking the lead. At the point that it settled out that the Cleveland Police Department was going to take the lead, our discussion evolved from there, and Councilman, here we are.
Okay, and I would really hope that the administration, in correlation with the law department, would really look, because we've heard this so many times that this has been thrust upon us. This was something that we had no input into. For something of this nature, I think we need to look at the codified ordinances. For someone to put us in this situation is really unfortunate, and in my opinion, was improper. So again, I think we need to look at, before someone else would quote unquote sponsor something else that puts the city of Cleveland in a very difficult situation, I think we need to look at what provisions are presently in place to say, no, you can't do this without the concurrence of the city of Cleveland and without the concurrence of Cleveland City Council. So I'll leave that up to the administration. You've indicated, and Director, Deputy Chief Drummond as well, during the May 30th event downtown, and I was there with the peaceful protesters, we all noticed that people were coming in carrying projectiles, carrying items that you could tell right out of the gate that they were up to no good. And the way they were dressed as well. They were dressed like they were ready to go to war. But there was no effort to direct that element into an area where the backpacks and everything else could have been checked. Is there, I'm assuming, and I have to ask, because again, this is the first time we've had an opportunity to engage. I'm assuming there will be access points or points of entry where individuals who are carrying quote unquote questionable items or backpacks or whatever the case may be, that they're going to be deterred from getting in.
So that's one of the things that this legislation allows us to do, similar to the RNC, to restrict the size of backpacks. That will allow us to, if someone is carrying a baseball bat, to address that. So that's really the part of part of this, and going to Board of Control, is to give us the ability to address suspect items before they come too far into the zone, and to confiscate those.
Because I can't stress enough that that was a major mistake by not controlling who was coming in and what they were bringing in, and that resulted, because again, I want to make this clear: there are protesters, and there are peaceful protesters, which is their constitutional right, and then there are criminals and terrorists. We've got to make sure that the peaceful protesters' rights are not violated, because I myself said on May 30th that the peaceful protesters, their rights were violated. They couldn't express their viewpoints and their thoughts and opinions because of the violence that the criminals and the terrorists perpetrated on not only them, but downtown Cleveland. So we want to make sure that the peaceful protesters have every opportunity to exercise their constitutional rights. But we also want to make it very clear that those individuals who come to town with the intent to do harm, either to individuals, law enforcement officers, or the community, because all of us have gotten calls. I mean, I was looking at emails and call, what's the game plan? What's the game? I don't know what the game plan is. And also from downtown business people who've indicated, a couple of them to me, that they're not taking their boards off until after this event, because they don't know what's going to happen. So there's not only concern for the surrounding area around the clinic and case, but there's there's concern citywide and in the downtown area. Is the state of Ohio supplying any resources, Mr. Chairman, to the director?
Director?
We have the National Guard has been come in, so the state is providing resources. And if I can just add one more point too, is that while we anticipate and we encourage peaceful protests, we also ask that those who come to protest peacefully, who want to exercise their voice, that if they see something wrong, to let us know so that we can address that as well, because they're going to, the peaceful protests are going to be in the crowd, and we fully anticipate and are prepared for agitators to come in as well. But those who want to come and express their voice and exercise their First Amendment right, if they see something, as well.
Okay. And so going back to Councilman Brancatelli's line of questioning, we know there's more involved in this, Mr. Chairman, than just law enforcement. So my question is, with regard to reimbursement, has there been an escrow account or anything set up to that? So could you have any idea, estimated cost of what this is going to cost to the
Director?
director?
We are, well, that I don't have that here in front of me, and I can get that to you, Councilman, but I can also tell you that we are still in ongoing discussions with Cleveland Clinic as far as the amount. So those numbers may be shifting, but I can get those, we can get those to you, Councilman.
I think it's they've got to be told. You're going to put several $1 million in an escrow account, both them and Case, because I want to make it clear. We don't want to. I don't want to find out after the fact that it cost us all this amount of money in light of all the other pressing needs in this city. I mean, there's not a council person who couldn't say right now of all the pressing needs in our community. I don't want any of your city dollars spent on this event. This was Cleveland Clinic's gig and Case. They wanted to be the quote unquote the sponsors of this event. And I think all of us were taken back when we had learned that the city did not have input into this process. I mean, they totally disrespect the mayor. I mean, I don't get it. So at the end of the day, we have to be made whole. And I say that I can't stress enough, made whole, 100% made whole. In light of what we're faced with the COVID-19 and all the economic strains that are on the city, we can't be chucking out any money for their gig up there, what they wanted. So I want to make that very clear. I think all of us are going to be looking at this real closely. And I can't stress enough to you, Director, you're the new guy in town. You weren't here for May 30th, but we all know what happened down there. We all hope for the best, but we have to plan for the worst, unfortunately, in this case. So at the end of the day, we all want reassurances that our city's going to be made whole and our citizens are going to be safe and the businesses are going to be safe. So I'll look forward to whatever information you can supply us. Again, I don't expect you to give us the security plans. I understand that, but we want assurances. I want assurances that our businesses, our citizens, and our city's going to be safe during this event. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thanks, Councilman. We have 4 more speakers to go. We do have guests from the schools and a piece after this, so I'm going to continue down the list. I would just ask people, if a point's already been made, if you could refrain from asking the same question or trying to make that same point again. I think we all get what's going on here, so I would just ask that going forward. With that, I'm going to go to Councilman Joe Jones. If you would please unmute yourself, Councilman.
Thank you, Mr. President, and to my colleagues. I believe that, our safety forces here in the city of Cleveland, a lot of the questions that I initially had were asked. My colleague, Mike Polensek, covered a lot of my thoughts concerning this particular issue, so I won't ask those questions, but I will say this, that Chief Williams and the safety director and the assistant chief did a wonderful job when the Republicans was here and had their convention in the city. So I don't have no doubt that they will do a great and outstanding job here on this event. This is a event that's in the city of Cleveland. It makes us look good as a city, having the first debate. And I don't have any uneasiness about them doing a good job, as well as working with various different law department groups to make this become a reality here and making our city shine. I know that there were some issues and problems with the protests in the city of Cleveland, but Mr. President, I just think that they're going to do the same outstanding job that they did for us in the past, and they'll do it here again. So I don't have any uneasiness, Mr. President. And I'm glad that at least they're there, because they've already shown us that they can keep peace and stability and events before. And I don't have no problems with believing that they can't do that here in this situation as well. That's it, Mr. President.
Thank you very much, Councilman. Councilman Brian Casey.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, to Deputy Director Drummond, in the May 30th protests, the city was underprepared for the amount of people that showed up for that protest and the events that took place. Are we prepared, overly prepared this time in case something like that does happen?
To Councilman Casey and the other council members, yes, we've been planning since we were notified that the debate was coming here, that we would be hosting at least case in the Cleveland Clinic. We started the process of planning. And to your point, we overplanned. We believe we have sufficient amount of personnel to handle this event. And our plan and our schemes are a little bit different, or not a little bit different, or it's way different from the 30th. I can reassure you that what you saw, what we experienced May 30th will not be repeated. We have ample supply of officers and assets on the ground, not only around the bubble, not only around Fairfax, University Circle, downtown. We have sufficient amount of personnel to handle what may pop up. And I'm hopeful that nothing happens, but we are prepared.
All right, thank you. And then on your earlier comments, you used the term all hands on deck. We're going to 12-hour days with no days off on that day. Is the city being reimbursed for just what's going on downtown? Or if we have 12-hour days on that day across the city, that cost is going to be increased by 2 or 3-fold. So are we just being reimbursed for what's happening over by the bubble? Or if we've got 12-hour days because of what's going on at the bubble, are we being reimbursed citywide on that aspect? And then the other aspect is, I just want to be reassured that all the other districts are going to be appropriately staffed while this is going on. And even if something goes off at the bubble, that there's going to be enough personnel at the bubble not to take away from any of the other districts.
Hey, Mr. Chairman, this is Chief Williams. Wayne, if I could jump in real quick. To the councilman's point, through the chair, the city is going to seek reimbursement for all overtime costs associated with this 2-day event. As the director stated, also within the legislation and within the MOU that we signed with the Cleveland Clinic, there's also the ability to seek reimbursement for other assets outside of public safety. So it's our intention to seek reimbursement for all costs associated with this event throughout the entire city.
Even if that means, Chief, we've got overtime going on in the first district, because we have additional men or women downtown, they're still going to cover that cost as well then, correct?
Through the chair of the councilman, the city is going to seek reimbursement for all of our overtime costs associated with that day. As the DC stated, all officers are on 12-hour shifts, including myself. All officers that had a vacation day or a day off that day, those days are canceled. So that's an automatic overtime payment to those officers to come in. So our agreement with the clinic is to seek reimbursement for all of that overtime that we're going to expend for the event.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Councilman. Councilman Charles Slife.
Yes, just thank you, Mr. Chair. Very quickly, a request of the administration. The press release that notes all the street closures is helpful, but it's pretty dense. I'm hoping that there will be a somewhat elaborate communication strategy to show what all those closures are on a map. There's RTA implications. There's obviously going to be people who still need to get to appointments or work at the clinic while all this is happening. And it's by just looking at it in the press release, it appears to be rather chaotic and confusing. And especially since it's such a large regional asset people come into the city for, I want to make sure people know how to get to their appointments in the days prior to the debate actually occurring.
State Director or Chief, can you please answer the councilman's question?
We will be continuously, we will be funneling information out to the public, but Cleveland Clinic is also going to have to take the onus on, letting their patients know. The facility is away from the main Cleveland Clinic building where medical services are provided, and Cleveland Clinic will be responsible for, or should be responsible for, addressing where their patients go for treatment. We will send out additional information with regard to the road closures. A visual map would be helpful to the public, and we'll work on getting that out.
All right, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Councilman. Back to Councilman Anthony Brancatelli.
Okay, let's try this again. I certainly apologize for my East Side Spectrum poor cable connections. If this question was answered while I was on my outage, that's fine. But during this this event, are there going to be mask requirements both inside and outside of the perimeter for this event for both the guests and those who are coming to protest?
Director or Chief?
Yes, we will still be requiring COVID is still with us. The mask is still the #1 defense against COVID. Mask requirements will still be in place.
Councilman?
And so what will occur if protesters show up without masks?
We will have to gauge that as that happens, Councilman. We don't want to create a larger issue or a security issue with regard to masks. We will work to identify those folks and then act accordingly. But if we can,
we're requiring it, but we don't have a plan to deal with it.
No. What I'm saying is that our efforts are going to be the same. There is still the legislation that was passed by council with regard to masks, and citations will be issued. What I'm saying is that we don't want to create a larger security issue for the issuance of a civil citation for masks. So there'll be a balance struck there between what we do. We do have a plan. The issuing of the citations is the plan, but we have to keep security in mind.
Additionally, if I can jump in, Councilman, additionally to Director's point, we have a mask as well, a surgical mask that we can also give out. We refer to warn and then provide a mask for the individuals before we move to citation, as the director indicated and so forth. We just don't want a larger issue that we have to deal with. So we'll have.
We got it, System Chief.
So we'll have masks available to hand out to the protesters.
Okay, thank you. And will there be testing required for those who are entering in and out? When we had the last visit here, there was required instant
Director, do you
testing.
answer the question?
They are required to test. I believe they're testing every 72 hours to get in and out of the facility.
Okay, and I know it was raised earlier, and I had raised it about the cost of overtime and road closures, but this question is more around the civil unrest. When we had the civil unrest throughout downtown, the city of Cleveland ended up picking up the tab and put millions of dollars in to help businesses. If there is civil unrest due to this event being held, is the Cleveland Clinic helping cover the costs to make businesses whole, to replace windows, and other issues that may arise from that?
Director, do you want to answer that question?
I don't have an answer for that right now. I know that we have discussed the cost to the city in excess of our daily operations, but with regard to that, I'd have to get back to council.
Yeah, I mean, that's an important part. Those are all the questions that I have at this point.
Thank you, Councilman. Thank you, Director. Thank you, Deputy Chief Drummond. If there's no other questions, no further questions or comments, ordinance number 76620 will be considered by the full council this evening. Thank you.
Thank you.
We have guests from the Cleveland Municipal School District. So at this point, I am going to jump to ordinance number 65620. It's down in the agenda a minute. Ordinance, I saw Director Cox was on. Is he still with us? Oh, I did.
Hello, Councilman. I'm here for Director Cox.
Great, thank you. Let me read this. Ordinance number 65620, council members Johnson and Kelly by departmental request, an emergency ordinance authorizing the Director of Public Works and Finance to enter into one more contract with Cleveland Municipal Metropolitan School District to conduct recreational, cultural, and extracurricular programs for the benefit of school children during the 2019-20 school year. Director, Assistant Director.
Good morning, Council President and members of council. We're requesting passage of this legislation to provide the Cleveland Municipal School District with $950,000 to support recreational, cultural, and extracurricular youth programs. We have with us today Desiree Powell, who is the Director of Interscholastic Athletics, health, physical education, and student activities. I'm going to ask if Desiree could introduce the members of her team that, and then be available to respond to any questions that council might have. Desiree?
Thank you very much. I'd like to introduce our staff from the district. We have Chief of Academics, Valentina Moxon. We have Leo Serrano, who is involved with grants and external funds that come into the district. We have Kenneth Barrett, who is from my department, who will now be overseeing all of the SEEP programming and supervision of that entire project. I have Nikita Baker with me from my department, who's in charge of our finance. And I'm not sure if I'm missing anyone else. I can't see everyone at the same time, so.
I'm here, Desiree, Jeffrey
Yeah,
Allen.
Jeffrey Allen from the Director of Arts is here as well. And I believe Kim Sias is here, who's in charge of All City.
Hold on, I want to watch the video.
Good morning.
Morning.
Okay, Council President.
Okay. So we've done this grant for as long as I've been here. And the question I have is for recreational activities. My daughter is a student of CMSD, and the teachers have done a pretty marvelous job on short notice when this dropped to switch to a virtual program, except for I'm not sure, and I probably should, but what are we doing for physical education and recreation for the kids during this time?
Well, they are getting the physical education instruction by the teachers during the day, but there was a decision when the district chose to go with all virtual, that there would be, if the kids were not safe to come to school for instruction, that there was a belief that it's probably not safe enough for them to come in to the buildings for extracurricular activities or for sports. So until right now, we're going through a team of committees to determine, and I know a survey is getting ready to go out to all the parents to find out if parents feel confident enough for the kids to come back to school, whether it be hybrid or face-to-face, or if they would prefer to continue with the virtual due to the COVID situation.
Thank you. And so, Ms. Powell, what then will the funds be used for this year?
There is an attempt on our part from the district, thankfully from our superintendent, Eric Gordon, to potentially anything that was missed in the fall to try to implement in the spring on top of the spring offerings. So there is we would need those funds in order to do that. So we're trying to make sure that if we can do things in the spring, everything will come together. And hopefully if we can get into the winter, we could implement winter, but then everything would just be pushed back until we can get together.
So at this point, I'd like to go to the Chair of Municipal Service and Properties, Councilman Ken Johnson, on ordinance number 65620. Councilman, you with us? Looking at my screen. We'll come back to Councilman Anthony Brancatelli.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and hopefully I'll get through this without the screen freezing up again. So you asked the question that I was asking was, this is $1 million, and since most all these activities are on hold right now, and as Ms. Powell stated, they hope to be able to get some of these activities back again towards the fall. But if that doesn't happen, then we'll deal with that for the next session and looking at the accounting of, if there is additional dollars left over, if it's not spent, then we can look at that for next year. Is that correct, Ms. Powell?
Yes, and I also wanted to add that I didn't say earlier, because of the COVID requirements now, there is going to be an increase if we're able to move forward and go in person again, because when we were normally able to carry 30 to 32 kids on a bus, and now we're down to 14 on a bus, the increased cost for using additional buses to get everyone to where they need to go is going to be a critical piece as well.
Yeah, this additional munis funding is critically important for activities that are certainly needed, and especially during these times, if we can do stuff outside and be engaged outside. So just a concern that since these are being held right now. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Councilman. Councilman Kevin Conwell.
Hey, thank you, Mr. President. To the chair, to who is the young lady presenting?
Ms. Powell.
Ms. Powell, I would like to see the school system have partnerships with other providers, i.e. Inspired Arts, i.e. Catholic Charities, that you guys work together and that they know about some of the programs that you're offering also through the chair. And do they? And how you doing, Mr. Allen?
Very well. How are you, sir?
Doing great. I'm doing great.
I agree with you, and we continuously expand upon our partnerships. I'll let Director Allen mention any additional partnerships through the arts as well.
Certainly. Thank you, Director Powell, for the opportunity to speak here. And thank you, City Council, for your consideration today. Yes, we have been working directly with some of our most significant partners, like the Center for Arts Inspired Learning, like Dancing Classrooms, like other significant arts organizations in the community, on how we can better support our scholars with our partners in arts opportunities and educational experiences. So they are well aware and are actually patiently awaiting our response to your response.
You know, Mr. President, I want to thank Jeffrey Allen for his support. He's on the project team for Play It Forward Cleveland. You know, Mr. Allen, the percussion classes are full, okay? However, I think we have a guitar sessions at Cordell, and we have to push that out for the students. And there's a violin session somewhere else that's getting full. I would love to see us open up another class. And we had an instrument drive. So we have the instruments. We just need you guys to put in more students. And I would love to open up another percussion class and for you to work with them so we can have better outcome measures.
I will continue to work with that team, sir.
Yeah, and so thank you for your support. I was talking with some teachers about you the other day, and I mentioned to Craig Brugg from East High. I said, he understands, he cares a lot. And he's working with us with the children. You know, in the arts, let me say this about the arts. Arts build character. And when you have good character, it's transfer over to become a better worker, a better father, a better mother, better citizens. The arts build self-discipline as well, great organizational skills. So with this dollars going over to you guys, I would like to see more put into the arts. A person doesn't have to be later on. Let me just say this real quick, Jeffrey. When we were doing the drive last year in 2019, a lady came to me and she had $1,000 violin. And she said, Councilman, I want to see that this violin go to a kid. And I said, well, what's going on with the violin? She said, my daughter is a dentist, and she's not using it, but this violin, she would be in her room practicing. And so that's the good characters that the art brings, helping people and all those kind of things. So I support the arts 100%. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Councilman. Councilman Brian Casey.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman and Ms. Powell, you said that you guys are working on a plan. So obviously the plan is not in place because we don't know what's going on. So if Cleveland City Council decides to allocate these funds, which I'm assuming, Mr. President, come out of the general fund. I know where they come from. They come from the parking tax, but it's out of the general fund, correct?
Correct.
Ms. Powell, if this money is released and there's no programs in place due to COVID, would Cleveland Municipal School District be prepared to reimburse the city the money back if the programs did not take place?
I do not have the authority to say that sitting here now, but I can definitely take that back. I'm not sure if Chief Moxon would want to speak to that, but I'm sure there would be some accountability and conversation with council to let them know what's going on quarter by quarter.
And then, Mr. Chairman, I just have some reservations about releasing some funds for things that may not happen. I know that it's broken down to the arts, and I read the legislation and each, athletic thing that's going on. I don't think I can be supportive of reimbursing something unless there's the plan in place for CMSD to move forward with this. I'd hate to start getting into a back and forth if we're releasing funds for something that's not going to happen. And CMSD currently at this moment does not have that plan in place. They're hoping to have a plan in place. And since it's general fund dollars, this could be a piece of legislation that we could hear at any time once their plan is in place. Just my opinion, but I appreciate the information. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman. And just perspective on this, and I'm not sure if this was covered in committee where it was voted through, is that this isn't like the whole budget for recreation and arts. This is just a small portion of it. It's just a portion of it. And I know just from what I see that my daughter's school is doing, I know the arts portion is still going. I know that there's a lot going. It's just that sports thing that I don't see. But I appreciate your comments. Anything further on ordinance 65620? If there's nothing further, ordinance number 65620 stands approved. Thank you very much. Thank you all.
Thank you,
Powell, thank you, and you and your team. Mr. Serrano, who else is with him? I'm going to look at my screen. Mr. Allen, I'm going to botch somebody, so I'll just thank everybody so I don't miss anyone.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you to the committee.
All right, thank you. Okay. Going back. All right, going back to the agenda. Is anybody from Economic Development here for 508? Going once?
I am here.
Oh, okay, wait, where are we? Okay, Director, thank you. All right, going back to ordinance number 50820. Ordinance number 50820, Councilors McCormick, Brancatelli, and Kelly by department request an emergency ordinance authorizing Director of Economic Development to enter into a tax increment financing agreement with Sustainable Community Associates or its designee to provide the developer to make certain improvements to the Lincoln Building Project, to provide for payments to the Cleveland Metropolitan School District, and to declare certain improvements to be real property to be a public purpose. Director?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is the second ordinance that would authorize the imposition of a non-school TIF in support of the redevelopment of the Lincoln Building at Granton Road and Wiley Avenue in Tremont. This is the same development group that's also invested in the Fairmont Creamery Building and the Ohio Awning Building in that same area. We're really thrilled that they're coming back again to do another project in that area, really activate that Scranton corridor. The project will contain about 6,500 square feet of commercial space, 83 residential units, about a quarter of which will be targeted at workforce housing. So in that like 120% AMI rent, and be subject to all of our usual rules and regulations.
Thank you, Director. And this ordinance has been heard and recommended for approval by the Committee on Development, Planning, and Sustainability. Chairman Brancatelli?
Thoroughly reviewed and supported. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. And this project would fall in Ward 3. I would like to hear from the local councilman, Councilman Kerry McCormick.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I fully support this ordinance. This is an exciting project on what is currently a vacant piece of land in the Tremont neighborhood. This has gone through our community process with the neighborhood. And as I mentioned in the conversation with DPS, they've agreed to a community benefits agreement with the neighborhood. In addition to the 25% workforce housing, and then the traditional requirements by the Economic Development Department of the City of Cleveland for MBE, FBE, et cetera. So it's gone through our thorough community process, Mr. Chairman, and we support this legislation.
Thank you very much, Councilman. Further questions, comments on ordinance number 50820? Hearing none, ordinance number 50820 stands approved. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, going back to Public Works Capital Projects, I'm going to read ordinance number 59220. Ordinance number 59220, Councilmembers McCormick, Johnson, Brancatelli, and Kelly by departmental request. An emergency ordinance authorizing Director of Capital Projects or Public Works to enter into one or more agreements with the Cleveland Cuyahoga Port Authority for improvements to Irishtown Bend and Franklin Avenue, and authorizing the Commissioner of Purchasing Supplies to acquire, accept, and record all property necessary.
Good morning, Council President, members of the committee. Yeah, the Irishtown Bend work includes stabilizing the hillside to prevent future landslides, replacing 2,600 linear feet of deteriorated and dilapidated bulkhead retaining wall along the Cuyahoga River, repairing damaged Northeast Ohio westerly intercept sewer line, regrading of the hillside, and reconstruction of Franklin Avenue from West 25th Street to Columbus Road. The future Irishtown Bend includes plans for a 17-acre park. The Cuyahoga County Port Authority is administering the design and construction of all of these improvements. So it is broken into 2 phases. There's the Irishtown Bend Hill Stabilization Project, which is a $25.5 million project, of which the City of Cleveland's local share for the design construction funding is $1 million. And then there's the Franklin Avenue Reconstruction Project, which is a county road. And that is a $2.1 million project for which the City of Cleveland's local share is $429,800. And that is a summary of the project. It'll be a transformative project for the area. In this area, that property is currently not available for public use at this time. The design is underway. It'll be completed in 2020, and then the construction should begin in February of 2022 and be complete by the 4th quarter of 2023.
Thank you, Director. This legislation has previously had 2 hearings. It was heard and recommended for passage by Committee on Municipal Services and Properties. Councilman Ken Johnson, Chairman, do you have any further questions, comments on 59220? You are muted, but I'm pretty sure you said no, you're good. Is that right? All right. This was also heard and recommended for passage by Committee on Development, Planning, Sustainability. Chairman Brancatelli.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thoroughly reviewed an exciting project, $25 million. And this is a project that really represents what great equitable planning means in our community. I had the pleasure to sit through some of these community meetings when we were actually allowed to meet and get together. Also it was very illuminating during the meeting on how much real estate's already tied up. And I did not realize that large parking lot in the corner of 25th and the bridge is owned by CMHA and not owned by the adjacent building owner, who just owns that building and a couple of parking spots behind. So we're in great shape of the land that we already own, that we can move forward and fully support it through our committee. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. I'd like to hear from the local council person, Councilman Kerry McCormick.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I fully support this legislation and thank the city administration team for their work on this as well. As was noted, this is a really significant transformative project, not just for the hillside and the park that will go there, a public park connecting 2 large public housing developments, as well as the greater community. But it's also important because it shores up a critically important international shipping channel, ensuring that the hillside doesn't literally fall into the river, which is a grave concern of the Port Authority, of many of the users of the river, commercial and recreational. So this is significance as an incredible asset to the city of Cleveland, the people of the city of Cleveland, but also to the river and the shipping channel that's important to the commerce of our region as well. So this is an important step along the journey of the Irishtown Bend project, and I thank everyone for their support.
Thank you, Councilman. Any further questions, comments on ordinance number 59220? Seeing no hands, ordinance number 59220 stands approved. Ordinance number 59820. Councilmembers Plansik, Johnson, and Kelly by departmental request. An emergency ordinance authorizing the mayor to apply to the District 1 Public Works Integrated Committee and accept funding for the rehabilitation of East 185th Street from Nottingham Road to Pawnee Avenue. Authorizing Director of Capital Projects to apply for and accept gifts, grants, or other funding, and to enter into contract with AECOM Technical Services for engineering and architectural services and other agreements authorizing the Commissioner of Purchases and Supplies to acquire, accept, and record for right-of-way purposes real property and easements, giving consent of the City of Cleveland to the Ohio Department of Ohio Director of Transportation for the improvement and authorizing director to enter into local project administration agreements with the state of Ohio and cause payment to the state for the city's share of the improvement. Director.
Yes, Council President, members of the committee. Yeah, East 185th Street from Nottingham Road to Pawnee will be completely rehabilitated. It's approximately 1.35 miles in length. The complete and Green Street and safety improvements for this corridor are comprehensive, and they include pavement rehabilitation, obviously utilization of all recycled materials, all new sidewalks, all new curbs, all new safety and ADA compliant curb ramps and landings, all new driveway aprons, completely new roadway drainage, new water mains, new traffic signals, streetscapes, and new shared lane stripings for multimodal use. This is an ODOT administered construction project. We're also working in conjunction with the city of Euclid, which is administering the East 185th Street project from Pawnee to Lake Erie, as the center line of the road in that area is the city limits between the two cities. So we call that the Phase 1 project. Cleveland Euclid have a split corporate line again, and we will utilize AECOM to design both of these phases. So we have a comprehensive project, and we'll have a streetscape plan in place for the entire corridor. The project is about $7 million in total cost. The City of Cleveland share is about 1.6 million, actually $1,650,000. The design is underway now, and construction is scheduled to begin in February of 2022.
Thank you. And ordinance number 59820 has been heard and recommended for passage by the Committee on Municipal Services and Properties. Councilman Ken Johnson, any further questions on 59820?
No, nothing further, Mr. Chairman, except I urge my colleague to support it.
Thank you, Councilman. I'd like to now hear from the local council person, Councilman Mike Polensek.
Mr. Chairman, can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It's been a project that the community's been working on for a very, very long time. East 185th is the major north-south commercial corridor on the northeast side of the city. And so we've had a partnership, as the director indicated, with the city of Euclid, Cleveland, Villangela St. Joseph's involved.
You muted yourself, Councilman.
We back now? We back? Yeah.
Yes.
So it's been a long time coming, and I want to thank the committee, and I want to thank my members, my colleagues, for supporting this much needed project. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman. Further questions, comments on ordinance number 59820? Hearing none, ordinance number 59820 stands approved. Ordinance number 65420, Councilmembers McCormick, Johnson, Kelly by departmental request, an emergency ordinance authorizing Director of Public Works to enter into a grant agreement with the Downtown Cleveland Alliance to assist with the purchase, storage, and maintenance of an artificial tree for the Winterfest at Public Square. Director?
Council President, members of council, The Department of Public Works is requesting passage of this legislation to provide Downtown Cleveland Alliance with $50,000 to assist with the cost to purchase, install, and maintain an artificial tree for a public square. The estimated cost in total is about $127,000. We're asking council to approve this request. The Department of Public Works in the past has relied on the generosity of volunteers to donate live trees for public square. And over the years, the number of donations and the quality of the trees that we've received, we've noticed a strong decline. And so we're working in partnership with Downtown Cleveland Alliance and asking for this body to approve the legislation that would authorize $50,000 for DCA.
Thank you, Assistant Director. And I'm assuming that whatever Winterfest looks like this year, it's probably going to be different, but the tree, the decoration phase, do you know that that's going to be business as usual for that part of it?
DCA will, the decorations for the tree will change from year to year. It'll just be the tree that will, the artificial tree itself will remain the same. But DCA will change the decorations, change the design for public square based upon whatever theme they have.
I guess what I was asking is that normally there's a big celebration, there's a big, shoulder to shoulder party, which probably won't happen, but the tree, the decorations, all that is going to go forward.
Yes, the decorations for downtown will go forward.
Great, thank you. This has been heard and recommended for passage by Committee on Municipal Services and Properties. Chairman Ken Johnson.
Mr. Chairman, the Assistant Director didn't mention that part of that, we're going to buy a tree for City Hall, also artificial tree, because of the decline in the trees. It doesn't make sense to kill a tree when we don't have to. And that tree will last probably for 30 years, simply because it's inside rather than outside.
Director, Assistant Director.
We will, the city is in the process of procuring a tree for City Hall as well. An artificial tree for City Hall.
Thank you. Okay. All good, Councilman Johnson?
Yes, I would urge passage, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. I want to go to our local council person where the Winterfest happens. It's Councilman Kerry McCormick.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Fully support this legislation. I believe that a final decision on what exactly Winterfest will look like has not been made. Obviously, I'm sure it's, as to your point, safe to bet it won't look like, if something happens, it won't look like it used to. But again, this is an important part of lighting up, the city of Cleveland's front yard, which is public square. And I'm excited to see how this works out with the additional decorations. Thank you.
Thank you. And while the tree itself falls in Ward 3, much of it spills into Ward 5. Councilman Cleveland, are you supportive of 65420? Still muted, Councilwoman. Wait, but I think I saw you shake your head, yes.
Yes. Yes, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Councilman Tony Brancatelli.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just a clarifying point, when this was presented, I don't think this included the tree for City Hall. I know they were looking at a separate acquisition for City Hall, but this was just for the downtown. If the Assistant Director can clarify.
Councilman Brancatelli, you are correct. This legislation is only regarding the tree for public hall. I'm sorry, public square. The procurement of the City Hall Rotunda tree is an internal procurement process.
Mr. Chairman, that would not require council approval to acquire a tree for the City Hall Rotunda, just clarifying?
No, it will not require, the cost for that tree will be less than the amount needed to seek council authority.
All right, I was just, and I did raise this issue at committee as well about, we're not even open to the public. We won't be open to the public by Christmas, and we're at limited staff and part-time operations. And in my screen, I show a Festivus pole, and maybe we should put the Festivus pole in Rotunda, and we can have the airing of the grievances, every morning. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Councilman. I won't be at that meeting. Councilman Charles Slife.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I will admit I have no familiarity with the price of artificial trees. The legislation is for up to $50,000. Do we have an idea of how much this tree? I understand that that's the cap, so we're not necessarily going to purchase the tree at that amount. But how much does a large artificial tree cost, give or take?
Councilman, the cost that we're sharing costs with DCA, but it includes not only the purchase of the artificial tree, there's storage, there's installation, maintenance of the tree. So there's more than just the tree itself, but the cost for total is $127,000, of which the city would provide $50,000.
All right, thank you.
Thank you, Councilman. Anything further on ordinance number 65420? Seeing no hands, ordinance number 65420 stands approved. Moving to finance, and we're going to begin with ordinance number 71420. Councilmember Kelly, by departmental request, an emergency ordinance authorizing Director of Finance to enter into an amendment to the lease agreement with Mid-City Limited, authorized by contract number 107017, passed on September 25th, 2017, for the lease of office space for the Cleveland Police Commission located at 3631 Perkins Avenue for an additional 2 years with one option to renew for an additional year, exercisable by the Director of Finance. Director?
Yes, Mr. Chair, members of council. Of course, this is an extension of the lease for the Cleveland Police Commission, which is of course part of our consent decree obligation. We had leased this space for the 5-year period of the beginning of the consent decree. It appears that we will be engaged at this point for an additional 2 years. The facility that they're currently at has accommodated what they need by way of office space. The lease rate remains the same for the extension. The annual rent payment is about $11,400 and about $950 a month. And I don't know if the executive director is on, because I can't see all the screen. But they are comfortable in the space, well accommodated. And since we do have to provide that space for that operation, we recommend that the council, or ask the council, to pass this.
Thank you, Director. And where this is basically a lease of office space, but I would like to hear from Councilman Zone on this. And I would like if the words police commission are contained in the caption, if we could kind of keep our questions to this lease agreement, I would much appreciate it. But Councilman Zone?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, to my colleagues, Jason Goodrick is on the call, who's the executive director of the Cleveland Police Commission. I've been to their offices. They're very modest. And so for those of you who haven't been there, this is not a palatial palace. They're very humble facilities. There's free and accessible parking attached to it. It's in the same building where offices like NEOC and others are. I'd ask my colleagues to support this piece of legislation.
Thank you, Chairman Zone. Councilman Brian Casey on the lease agreement contemplated in 71420.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just one quick question. How many people does this space accommodate? How many members of the police commission are there?
Director Goodrick, do you want to answer that?
Yes, hello. To the councilman through the president. We have 5 FTEs there currently every day. And then the ability to flex out and add community members and commissioners for the work group. So full space to accommodate all of our needs there.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Councilman. Councilman Zone, do you have any further? Your hand is up. I don't know if you. Okay, all good. Further questions, comments on 71420? Hearing none. Ordinance number 71420 stands approved. Resolution 73520. Councilmember Kelly by departmental request, an emergency resolution requesting the county fiscal officer to make advances during year 2021 pursuant to section 321.34 of the Ohio Revised Code. Chief?
Mr. Council President and members of council, of course, this is our annual distribution of our property taxes that are, of course, levied, collected, assessed, and then shared with us through the county. We have to provide them as we do annually with this resolution that allows them to make distributions, which are advances throughout the year, so that we collect the amount of property tax that we're supposed to get over the fiscal year for fiscal year 2021.
Thank you. Any changes year over year that you're expecting?
No changes year over year in the body of the ordinance. No changes in how they distribute. We have had, with the changes in the assessed valuations, we have had some additional conversations about the amount that we're receiving. This year, we had additional conversations about when we receive the amounts because of the extended date that they gave on the second half, as most of the taxing entities did, including us, where income tax was concerned. But other than that, it's an operation as normal.
Thank you. Questions, comments on 73520? Seeing no hands, resolution 73520 stands approved. Resolution 73620, Councilmember Kelly by departmental request, an emergency resolution accepting the amounts and rates as determined by the Cuyahoga County Budget Commissioner and authorizing the necessary tax levies and certifying them to the county fiscal officer. Chief?
So this is the accompanying piece. We give them one that says we accept the distribution dates. This one is we accept the amounts and the rates as determined by the County Budget Commission and the levy to collect it. So one collects it and one says, these are the dates that you're going to distribute it to the city for fiscal year 2021.
Great. Questions, comments on 73620? Seeing no hands, our resolution 73620 stands approved. Thank you, Chief. This concludes the legislation that is before the council for today. Councilman Anthony Brancatelli, did you have miscellaneous?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just a clarifying point, 76620, that was just for introduction for this portion of the meeting. We'll be voting on that tonight.
Which 766?
Yes, that's the authorizing the qualifying event, the permit for the debate.
Okay, I have two resolutions.
It's for passage. It can't be for, I mean, the event is next Tuesday.
Right. Yeah.
Right. So my question is for this portion of the meeting, it was an introduction. And then it'll be for passage at the council meeting.
I'm sorry, which resolution or which ordinance?
Ordinance number 766/2020. That was for the qualifying event for the debate.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yes, that is requested to be passed under suspension. So we are
Okay.
we hope to pass it this morning.
Okay, so if I can just, for the clerk, just to record me as a no vote for that one. Thank you.
You can do that at the time would be the best way to do that.
Okay, well, okay.
Thank you. Is there anything else for the good of the order? My clock, I have 11:44. If everybody could not sign out, you can turn your camera and your mic off, but let's reconvene at 12 o'clock sharp. I would much appreciate it. And we'll have the council meeting at 12 sharp. Thank you so much. So Pat, what's our number right now?
8.
8, okay.
What is it, Council President? How many? What's the number?
Right now we have 8. We need one more. We're gonna start. Here we go.
We have it now.
Okay. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Kelly,
Here.
Bishop,
Here.
Kelly, Cleveland,
Here.
Conwell,
Here.
Griffin, Hairston,
Here.
Johnson,
Here.
Ashir Jones, Joe Jones, Casey,
Present.
Here. Joe Jones here.
McCormack, Mooney,
Here.
Kalinsik, Santana, Slight,
Present.
Zone.
Present.
You have a quorum, Mr. President.
Thank you. Everybody please pause for a moment of silence, followed by the Pledge of Allegiance. Thank you. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation,
Under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
This council meeting is being held during the COVID-19 emergency declaration and is being conducted as a virtual meeting in accordance with Ohio's open meeting laws as amended by Sub-House Bill 197. Council Rule 49 requiring the attendance of the mayor and directors of all departments at Cleveland City Council meetings is waived for this and any other virtual council meetings held under amended Sub-House Bill 197. In compliance with the charter and rules of council, a copy of all legislation to be heard during this council meeting was furnished previous to the meeting to every council member through their council email. It is hereby acknowledged without objection that all council members have received this legislation. Further, council members must be visibly present for all votes. If you are not present, your vote will not be counted. Madam Clerk, please dispense with the journal.
By Councilmember Casey, that the reading of the minutes of the last meeting be dispensed with the journal approved, seconded by Councilmember Cleveland.
Communications.
File number 744, 2020, from Cuyahoga County Board of Elections, notification to Cleveland registered voters in precincts with changes to polling locations for November 2020 election. From the Ohio Division of Liquor Control, file number 771, 2020, a liquor agency contract at 4127 East 131st Street, Ward 1. File number 772, 2020, new license application at 2181 Ambleside Drive, Ward 6. File number 773, 2020, a stock application at 1281 West 9th Street, Ward 3. File number 774, 2020, a stock application at 11119 Detroit Avenue, Ward 15.
First reading emergency ordinances to be referred for administrative and committee review.
Ordinance 745, 2020, by Councilmember Kelly by departmental request, an emergency ordinance authorizing refunding and remarketing of airport system revenue bonds, authorizing supplemental indentures and other agreements related to the bonds, and authorizing and approving related matters. Ordinance 746, 2020, by Councilmember Kelly by departmental request, an emergency ordinance authorizing the issuance of bonds by the city for the purpose of refunding a portion of the city's currently outstanding public power system revenue bonds, authorizing hedge agreements, authorizing supplemental indentures, and certain other documents related thereto, and authorizing and approving related matters. Ordinance 747, 2020, by Councilmember Kelly by departmental request, an emergency ordinance authorizing the issuance and sale of revenue refunding bonds to refund outstanding revenue bonds of the Core City Program for Economic and Community Development in the city and authorizing related matters. Ordinance 748, 2020 by Councilmember Kelly by departmental request. An emergency ordinance authorizing supplemental lease purchase agreements and other agreements relating to the lease purchase of the Cleveland Stadium known as First Energy Stadium, approving the issuance of refunding certificates of participation or conversion and remarketing of variable rate certificates of participation and related supplemental trust agreements and authorizing and approving related matters. Ordinance 749, 2020 by Council Members Zone and Casey, an emergency ordinance to amend sections 173.13 to 17, 20, 21, and 65 and 67 of the codified ordinances relating to salaries of various city boards and commission members. Ordinance 750, 2020 by Council Members Casey and Kelly by departmental request. An emergency ordinance authorizing Director of Public Utilities to enter into one or more contracts without competitive bidding with Hatch Company for labor, materials, and services needed to calibrate, maintain, and repair laboratory and inline process equipment that's used to test drinking water manufactured by the Hatch Company, including replacement equipment and parts for the Division of Water. Ordinance 751, 2020 by Council Members Bashir Jones, Brancatelli, and Kelly by departmental request. An emergency ordinance authorizing the mayor and the Commissioner of Purchases and Supplies to acquire and reconvey properties presently owned by CC Superior Holding or its designee for the purpose of entering into the chain of title prior to the adoption of tax increment financing legislation authorized under section 570941 of the revised code. Ordinance 752, 2020 by Council Members Bashir Jones, Brancatelli, and Kelly by departmental request. An emergency ordinance authorizing Director of Economic Development to enter into a job creation incentive program grant agreement with Cross Country Mortgage Services or its designee to support the construction of their headquarters at East 21st Street and Superior Avenue. Ordinance 753, 2020 by Council Members Bashir Jones, Brancatelli, and Kelly by departmental request. An emergency ordinance authorizing Director of Economic Development to enter into a forgivable loan agreement with Cross Country Mortgage Services or its designee to provide economic development assistance to partially finance the development of their headquarters located at East 21st and Superior and other associated costs necessary to redevelop the property. Ordinance 754, 2020 by Council Members Casey and Kelly by departmental request. An emergency ordinance determining the method of making the public improvement of renewing, repairing, and replacing various water mains in 2021 and 22, and authorizing Director of Public Utilities to enter into one or more public improvement contracts for the making of the improvement. Ordinance 755, 2020 by Council Members McCormack, Cleveland, Bashir Jones, Johnson, Brancatelli, and Kelly by departmental request. An emergency ordinance determining the method of making the public improvement of reconstructing a portion of East 18th Street, authorizing Director of Capital Projects to enter into one or more contracts for the construction and design, to accept gifts or grants, authorize other agreements, and authorize to purchase the Commissioner of Purchases and Supplies to acquire real property and easements. Ordinance 756, 2020 by Councilmember Kelly by departmental request. An emergency ordinance authorizing Director of Human Resources to employ one or more healthcare providers, benefits, and claims, and to evaluate proposals received for benefit management services. Ordinance 757, 2020 by Councilmember Kelly by departmental request. An emergency ordinance authorizing Director of Finance to enter into various written standard purchase and requirement contracts to provide paging equipment, cellular devices, data services, wireless connectivity, activation equipment, and various related products and services, and monthly fees and charges for citywide use for Division of Information Technology and Services, Department of Finance. Ordinance 758, 2020 by Council Members Zone and Kelly by departmental request. An emergency ordinance authorizing Director of Public Safety to renew a lease agreement with Cuyahoga County for the lease of certain space located on various floors of the Justice Center. Ordinance 759, 2020, by council members Johnson and Kelly by departmental request, an emergency ordinance authorizing Director of Public Works to execute deeds of easement granting to the East Ohio Gas Company, DBA Dominion Energy Ohio, certain easement rights and property located at Shaker Boulevard and Warrensville Center Road in the city of Shaker Heights, and declaring that the easement rights granted are not needed for public use.
First reading emergency ordinances to be passed.
Ordinance 766, 2020, by council members Zone and Kelly by departmental request, an emergency ordinance to authorize the mayor or the appropriate director to enter into one or more agreements with Cleveland Clinic Foundation and Case Western Reserve related to the presidential debate, which event shall be designated as a mayor qualifying event subject to the applicable provisions of Codified Ordinance Chapter 697A. Ordinance 767, 2020, by Councilmember Polensek, an emergency ordinance authorizing the Director of Department of Community Development to enter into agreement with Laura M. Bela to provide consulting services for commercial revitalization services for East 185th Street project through the use of Ward 8 casino revenue funds. Ordinance 768, 2020, by Councilmember Kelly by departmental request. An emergency ordinance authorizing Director of Human Resources to exercise a second option to renew a contract with Discovery Benefits to administer the city's COBRA program and HIPAA compliance.
Read the motion to suspend the rules.
By Councilmember Casey, that the rules be suspended and the legislation just read be placed on final passage. Seconded by Councilmember Cleveland.
Please call the roll.
Kelly, Bishop, Brancatelli, Cleveland, Conwell, Griffin, Hairston, Johnson, Bashir Jones, Joe Jones, Casey, McCormack, Mooney, Polensek, Santana, Slife Zone. 13 yeas.
Please
Mr.
call the
Chairman?
roll on passage. Wait, I'm sorry.
I'm sorry. Please record me as no on 766-20.
On roll call or passage?
Passage.
Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Kelly, Bishop, Brancatelli, Cleveland, Conwell, Griffin, Hairston, Johnson, Bashir Jones, Joe Jones, Casey, McCormack, Mooney, Polensek, Santana, Slife, Zone. On 766-2020, 12 yeas, 1 nay. On all others, 13 yeas, no nays.
Thank you. First reading ordinances referred for administrative and committee review.
Ordinance 760, 2020, by Councilmember Brancatelli, an ordinance changing the use area and height districts of parcels of land north and south of Harvard Avenue between East 55th and the western property line of 6900 Harvard Avenue. Ordinance 761, 2020, by Councilmember Slife, an ordinance changing the use area and height districts of parcels of land west of Rocky River Drive between Dartmouth Avenue and Usufruct Avenue. Ordinance 762, 2020, by Councilmember Griffin, an ordinance changing the use area and height district of parcels of land east of Woodhill Road and south of Mount Carmel Road.
First reading resolutions to be referred for administrative and committee review.
Resolution 769, 2020, by council members Slife, Johnson, and Brancatelli by departmental request. An emergency resolution declaring the intent to vacate a portion of Lynn Court Northwest.
First reading emergency resolutions to be adopted.
Resolution 763, 2020, by council member Brancatelli, an emergency resolution objecting to a C1 liquor permit at 6506 Fleet Avenue. Resolution 764, 2020, by council member Mooney, an emergency resolution objecting to the transfer of liquor license of a C2C2X liquor permit to 3935 West 130th Street. Resolution 765, 2020, by council member Kelly, an emergency resolution fixing the date of the next regular the next regular meeting of council, October 7, 2020. Resolution 770, 2020, by Councilmember Joe Jones. An emergency resolution objecting to the liquor agency contract located at 4127 East 131st Street.
Read the motion to suspend the rules.
By Councilmember Casey, that the rules be suspended and the legislation just read be placed on final passage. Seconded by Councilmember Cleveland.
Please call the roll.
Kelly, Bishop, Brancatelli, Cleveland, Conwell, Griffin, Hairston, Johnson, Bashir Jones, Joe Jones, Casey, McCormack, Mooney, Polensek, Santana, Slight, Zone. 14 yeas.
Please call the roll on adoption.
Kelly, Bishop, Brancatelli, Cleveland, Conwell, Griffin, Hairston, Johnson, Bashir Jones, Joe Jones, Casey, McCormack, Mooney, Polensek, Santana, Slight, Zone. 14 yeas.
Thank you. Second reading, emergency ordinances to be passed.
Ordinance 443, 2020 by council members McCormack, Johnson, and Brancatelli by departmental request. An emergency ordinance authorizing Director of Capital Projects to issue a permit to D1 Rentals LLC to encroach into the public right-of-way beneath West 20th Place by installing, using, and maintaining an underground electrical conduit. Ordinance 444, 2020 by council members McCormack, Johnson, and Brancatelli by departmental request. An emergency ordinance authorizing Director of Capital Projects to issue a permit to Hattis Window Pane LLC to encroach into the public right-of-way of Prospect Avenue by installing, using, and maintaining 1 embedded brass medallion, 1 trash receptacle, 4 bronze benches, 8 bronze, and 9 concrete planters. Ordinance 445, 2020 by council members McCormack, Johnson, and Brancatelli by departmental request. An emergency ordinance authorizing Director of Capital Projects to issue a permit to Ohio City Legacy LLC to encroach into the public rights-of-way of Lorraine Avenue, West 25th Street, and Gearing Street by installing, using, and maintaining basement shoring, tieback rods, a building canopy, and 2 building-mounted pylon signs. Ordinance 508, 2020 by council members McCormack, Brancatelli, and Kelly by departmental request. An emergency ordinance authorizing Director of Economic Development to enter into a tax increment financing agreement with Sustainable Community Associates or its designee to provide for the developer to make certain improvements to the Lincoln Building Project, to provide for payments to the Cleveland Metropolitan School District, and to declare certain improvements to real property and to declare certain improvements to real property to be a public purpose. Ordinance 557, 2020 by council members McCormack, Santana, Johnson, and Brancatelli by departmental request. An emergency ordinance authorizing Director of Capital Projects to issue a permit to Tremont West Development Corporation to encroach into the public rights-of-way within the Tremont neighborhood by installing, using, and maintaining 22 bicycle racks. Ordinance 592, 2020 by council members McCormack, Johnson, Brancatelli, and Kelly by departmental request. An emergency ordinance authorizing Director of Capital Projects or Public Works to enter into 1 or more agreements with the Cleveland Cuyahoga County Port Authority for improvements to Irishtown Bend and Franklin Avenue, and authorizing the Commissioner of Purchases and Supplies to acquire, accept, and record all property necessary. Ordinance 598, 2020 by council members Polensek, Johnson, and Kelly by departmental request. An emergency ordinance authorizing the mayor to apply to the District 1 Public Works Integrating Committee and accept funding for the rehabilitation of East 185th Street from Nottingham to Pawnee Avenue. Authorizing Director of Capital Projects to apply for and accept grants, gifts, and other funding, and to enter into contract with AECOM Technical Services for engineering and architectural services and other agreements. Authorizing the Commissioner of Purchases and Supplies to acquire, accept, and record for right-of-way purposes, real property and easements. Giving consent of the City of Cleveland to the Ohio Director of Transportation for the improvement, and authorizing Director to enter into local project administration agreements with the State of Ohio and cause payment to the State of Ohio for the city's share of the improvement. Ordinance 654, 2020 by council members McCormack, Johnson, and Kelly by departmental request. An emergency ordinance authorizing Director of Public Works to enter into a grant agreement with Downtown Cleveland Alliance to assist with the purchase, storage, and maintenance of an artificial tree for winter fests at Public Square. Ordinance 656, 2020 by Council Members Johnson and Kelly by departmental request. An emergency ordinance authorizing Director of Public Works and Finance to enter into one or more contracts with Cleveland Metropolitan School District to conduct recreational, cultural, and extracurricular programs for the benefit of school children during the 2019-2020 school year. Ordinance 714, 2020 by Councilmember Kelly by departmental request. An emergency ordinance authorizing Director of Finance to enter into an amendment to the lease agreement with Mid-City Limited for the lease of office space for the Cleveland Police Commission located at 3631 Perkins Avenue for an additional 2 years with one option to renew for an additional year, exercisable by the Director of Finance.
Read the motion to suspend the rules.
By Councilmember Casey, that the rules be suspended and the legislation just read be placed on final passage, seconded by Councilmember Cleveland.
Please call the roll.
Kelly, Bishop, Brancatelli, Cleveland, Conwell, Griffin, Hairston, Johnson, Bashir Jones, Joe Jones, Casey, McCormack, Mooney, Palencic, Santana, Slight, Zone. 14 yeas.
Before calling the roll on passage, Councilman Brian Casey.
Mr. President, please mark me a no on 654, 656, and 714. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman. Please call the roll on passage.
Kelly, Bishop, Brancatelli, Cleveland, Conwell, Griffin, Hairston, Johnson, Bashir Jones, Joe Jones, Casey, McCormack, Mooney, Palencic, Santana, Slight, Zone. On ordinance 654, 656, and 714, 13 yeas, 1 nay. On all others, 14 yeas.
Thank you. Second reading ordinances to be passed.
Resolution 713, 2020 by Council Members McCormack, Cleveland, Bashir Jones, Brancatelli, and Kelly by departmental request. An emergency resolution approving the expansion of the Downtown Cleveland Improvement District, accepting the petitions from owners of property in the proposed district as expanded, approving the amended articles of incorporation of the Downtown Cleveland Improvement Corporation, approving the comprehensive services plan for the continued operations of the district, declaring it necessary to provide for additional security, cleaning, maintenance, and economic development and marketing of the district, and providing for the assessment of the cost and expense of such work upon benefited property in the district, and declaring an emergency. Resolution 735, 2020 by Councilmember Kelly by departmental request, an emergency resolution requesting the county fiscal officer to make advances during the year 2021 pursuant to section 321.34 of the Ohio Revised Code. Resolution 736, 2020 by Councilmember Kelly by departmental request, an emergency resolution accepting the amounts and rates as determined by the Cuyahoga County Budget Commission and authorizing the necessary tax levies and certifying them to the county fiscal officer.
Read the motion to suspend the rules.
By Councilmember Casey, that the rules be suspended and the legislation just read be placed on final passage, seconded by Councilmember Cleveland.
Please call the roll on adoption.
Kelly, Bishop, Brancatelli, Cleveland, Conwell, Griffin, Hairston, Johnson, Bashir Jones, Joe Jones, Casey, McCormack, Mooney, Palencic, Santana, Slight, Zone. 14 yeas.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Before I ask to excuse the absences, was there any second reading on non-emergency ordinances?
Mr. President,
Yes.
we need to take the vote.
I'm sorry?
Adoption, yeah.
Okay, so we're all covered.
No, we need to do that.
Okay, so we need second reading, ordinances to be passed.
Yep. Kelly, Bishop, Brancatelli, Cleveland, Conwell, Griffin, Hairston, Johnson, Bashir Jones, Joe Jones, Casey, McCormack, Mooney, Polensek, Santana, Slife Zone. On resolution 7/13/2020, 13 yeas, no nays, 1 recusal. On all others, 14 yeas, no nays.
Thank you. Council Brancatelli?
This will be miscellaneous after when we're done. Thank you.
Okay, so that covers us, Madam Clerk?
I'm sorry, yes.
All right, would you please excuse the absences?
I'm hearing that you skipped second reading ordinance.
That's what I was asking about. That's what I was asking, if there was second reading for ordinances, for regular ordinances to be passed.
Okay, these are second reading ordinances.
Okay, that's what I wanted to clarify. Okay, so we're going, so these are the non-emergent, so this is second reading ordinances to be passed.
Ordinance 563/2020 by Councilmember Zone, changing the use, area, and height districts of parcels of land south of Cleveland Memorial Shoreway between 78, West 78 and West 70th Street. Ordinance 600/2020 by Councilmember Slife, replacing a 25-foot specific mapped setback from the property line with a 7-foot specific mapped setback from the property line along the eastern side of Rocky River Drive between Sedalia Avenue and Belgrave Avenue.
Read the motion to suspend the rules.
By Councilmember Casey, that the rules be suspended and the legislation just read be placed on final passage. Seconded by Councilmember Cleveland.
Please call the roll.
Kelly, Bishop, Brancatelli, Cleveland, Conwell, Griffin, Hairston, Johnson, Bashir Jones, Joe Jones, Casey, McCormack, Mooney, Polensek, Santana, Slife Zone. 14 yeas.
Please call the roll on passage.
Kelly, Bishop, Brancatelli, Cleveland, Conwell, Griffin, Hairston, Johnson, Bashir Jones, Joe Jones, Casey, McCormack, Mooney, Polensek, Santana, Slife Zone. 14 yeas.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Please excuse the absences.
By Councilmember Casey, that the absence of council members Bashir Jones and Santana are hereby excused. Seconded by Councilmember Cleveland.
Thank you, Councilman Brancatelli.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would be remiss not to acknowledge the Cleveland Indians in their walk-off victory last night, pushing them into the playoffs for this year. We need as much good news as we can get. It was a great win, and looking forward to the playoffs.
Thank you, and if only we had admission taxes. If there is nothing else for the good of the order, council is adjourned at the call of the chair. The next regular meeting of the council is scheduled for Wednesday, October 7th, 2020. Thank you all very much.